Hi folks, it's Nick Dreyer here from Veldskoen. And as you know, from time to time I go around and I chat to folks that are doing incredible things during lockdown or adding value to South Africa and to the world in general, especially around interesting businesses and specifically around business pivoting. Today I'm joined by an incredibly interesting guy called Colin Garnett, and he has done something remarkable which I think is going to be very good for South Africa and very good for the world. And it's a very, very important piece of technology that addresses the tsunami of danger we are faced in terms of mental health and support for those that have substance abuse addictions. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Colin. Colin, welcome. And nice to have you here.
Thank you, Nick. It's nice to be here. It's a privilege.
No, it's my privilege, Colin. And so listen, I know a little bit about your history, but let's just tell those that are watching, can you give us, I have no idea how you can give yourself a short bio, but could you tell us a little bit about yourself and your story?
I can, Nick. I've had a little bit of practice on condensing it and leaving it. I want to leave it interesting, you see. Basically, I was an intravenous heroin addict for, I was actually using heroin for about 13 years, but I grew up and lived in the drug culture for my life has been immersed in the drugs and the drug culture for about 30 years all told. And I actually became addicted. I can now, with hindsight, I can see now that my addiction was post-traumatic stress related. Having seen too much death up close and personal too young, and then never receiving any what we now call debriefing from the trauma. And so within 2 years of my last traumatic event, I was injecting heroin and amphetamine and alcohol. I was mixing all the different types of drugs, stimulants and sedatives, and none of it made any sense. I've been clean and sober since 1993. So from a chronic heroin addiction and a life of crime to fund the heroin addiction, the one thing that kept me alive throughout it all was my visits to prison. I did 6.5 years in 27 different prisons.
Wow.
And towards the end, for my last prison sentence, when I got arrested for the last time in 1997, I was relieved, Nick. The police came into the house at about 5:30 in the morning, and I heard them running up the stairs, and I thought, yeah, let's go. I'm done.
Wow. So you'd gotten to that point mentally where prison was a relief.
Yeah, prison, the jail was my bail. That's how insane the addiction. I mean, everything I touched turned to stolen. Everybody I met turned to hurt. I couldn't do it anymore, man.
Yeah.
I couldn't do it. And I was scared of living, scared of dying. I started off, I was afraid that the drugs might kill me. And then towards the end, my fear was they were never going to kill me. So 49.9 kilos in weight. There you go.
So if I had to characterize you by way of a really bad metaphor, in terms of being a substance abuser and troublemaker, you'd be playing probably somewhere in the Premier League for one of the top clubs.
Oh, I'd have a trophy room, mate. I did bad very well, unfortunately.
Colin, and then of course that changes. And there's then the second chapter, which of course could not have been born without the first chapter. But you're clearly not South African, yet I'm talking to you while you're in Plettenberg Bay. So tell us a little bit about the journey from the police running up the stairs for the last time to where you're sitting now.
Yeah, I came out of prison in 1993, clean and sober. I was 6 months clean and sober. And it's really easy to get substances in the prison. It's easier as an addict in the prison than it is outside. So we were smoking weed every night. Used to smoke weed every night, and there was the occasional homemade hooch that went round. So when I say I was clean and sober, excuse me, 6 months before I got out of prison, that's absolutely miraculous. People used to come to my cell and just look at me clean and sober because I wasn't using anymore. And in that last 6 month window, I knew that there's a message here. There's a message here. I've got so many friends who are dead and buried in Manchester. And in that 6 month window, and ever since, I don't think there's a day goes by that I don't think about the guys who died, because they don't know what I found out. It's terrible. It's like a ghost.
It's a weight you carry.
It's the weight. But you know what, Nick? I think it might be survivor guilt. I think I mentioned survivor guilt to my wife last night, and it really resonated. And I think it can be quite a good motivator. It doesn't beat me up, and I'm not depressed about it. But there's no turning back and no surrender. And today, I'm married to a South African girl. She's got a law degree. She comes from, her dad was the chief of police at one point.
Wow.
And her
That would have been a fun first meeting.
I know, it was great. I loved it. I just loved that little ironic twist. It was beautiful. But we met in Cape Town. I went to Cape Town to share my story in prisons and various churches and schools. And I met Deanna on that speaking tour, and we married 12 months later in the church that we met. And when I phoned her dad to ask for his permission to take his daughter's hand in marriage, he dragged me over the calls. But we gelled. You know, the guy knows a villain when he sees a villain, and he knows a good guy when he sees a good guy. So I was confident that if he is who I think he is, this is going to go well, and it did.
Yeah.
Of course, we got married.
That's incredible, and I can't wait to have a separate discussion at some point, a little bit more in depth about the previous chief of police.
Yeah.
So you and Deanna meet each other after you've been spreading some stories of your life and your recovery, and you find yourself in South Africa, and what a place to find yourself. It's it's also not one of the easiest places in the world, and it's also a place that needs a lot of help. And knowing you a little bit, I would imagine that resonated with you, and the plans that you made moving forward.
I was appointed as the head of an international prison prison ministry. I had an office in America, Russia, England, and South Africa. And I came to South Africa to meet the prison ministry down in Pollsmoor prison. I suddenly had a team of volunteers in the prisons, and they would fulfill various roles in the prison. And I suddenly became the head of this international prison ministry. And one of them took me for a ride around the Cape Flats. And I went in and out of the gang culture and met some of the 28s and met the Americans. And when I went back into the prison, I thought, I can't do this, man. I can't tell these guys how they should live when they get out. If I was living in those circumstances, I'd be doing exactly the same as them. Mm. So I phoned my organization in England and resigned and said, I need to work with these guys rather than try and get them to somewhere I've never been.
Sure. So you decided to use the tools that you know.
Yeah. And it tested to see if my wife was after with me for the pound as well. And she stuck with me. Once I resigned, she still stuck with me. So it was a good test. Yeah. The organization in England carried on paying me for 2 years because they could see what I was doing. And in 2003, I said to Dee, I need to start a clinic, man.
Yeah.
I need to get people in and go hands-on with them.
Yeah. And then you ended up putting your arms around a whole bunch of addicts and folks that were very sick, and you created this place called New Bethesda in Plettenberg.
Bethesda,
And it's been doing incredible work for almost a decade, or just more than a decade.
Well, we officially launched Bethesda on the Garden Route in 2005.
Yeah. Wow.
And we got so popular the Department of Social Development were really impressed, and they gave us official registration.
Okay.
So I'm on an ego boost now because it's turned from a drop-in for dropouts into this lekker, posh private clinic in Plettenberg Bay. And we find that we can now work with medical aid schemes, and people can come to our facility for 28 days and the medical aid paid for their treatment. And I started to hate it. Our success took me away from the people I originally came for. I was here to work with. All of a sudden, I've gone from working with the poor and homeless down and out to the rich and wealthy up and out. And
that's an incredibly. I've heard you say that before, and you say that your success removed you from what your core mission was, and to help those. Yeah, I find that incredible, and I mean it'll lead us on to what you're doing now, which just fits so beautifully into your mission in life.
Yeah.
But just tell me a little bit about that transition from the down and out to the up and out.
I can't. There's no difference. The issues we were dealing with the down and outs was obviously they had hunger and they needed clothes and all that kind of stuff. But the heart of the matter, the hurt and the abuse and the abandonment and the shame and the guilt and the fear is exactly the same if you live in a shop doorway as it is if you live on beach here in Plettenberg Bay.
Yeah.
And I marvel sometimes. There's very little difference between the two.
That's incredible. You know, it's like almost that metaphor. Pain is pain, no matter who you are.
Yeah. In fact, I find it more difficult to get to the heart of the well-groomed young man or the well-groomed young woman than I do the guy who had no parents or had abusive parents.
Yeah.
I personally think it's probably more difficult to see the need for help when you come from that such a and externally a visibly wonderful home, a really nice home.
Yeah.
But then when we eventually get behind the defenses, it's the same broken, scared little girl, scared little boy.
Yeah.
People are people.
Yeah. Now I could talk to you for hours and hours and hours about what you've done, but we're here to talk a little bit about what you're doing at the moment. And so just to give everybody some context, COVID happened. And as we know, my mother is from Plettenberg Bay, and we have a mutual friend who then phoned and said, Nick, have you got any thoughts on this problem? And the problem was that all the folks that were in the system in Plet had to leave the house because COVID, of course, closed the borders. And I was like, wow, that's a really interesting problem, because then how are these people going to be looked after from a distance? I then spoke to you, and it turns out that COVID wasn't the problem looking for a solution. It was actually the catalyst to a problem that you had identified long ago. And if anything, COVID was just the spark required to then build this incredible platform called ehab, which is to do what we are doing right now in this digital environment, but to provide the tools required for post recovery, or even during, online globally. And I hope I've described it correctly.
Yeah.
That's how we arrived here. Yeah. That's how we've arrived here, and that's how I now know you. But tell us a little bit about pre-COVID, why this was important pre-COVID, and how this has kept you up at night for so long.
Yeah. Working with these guys down in Observatory in Cape Town and in Posmore Prison, and then working with the guys we got people coming into our facility from all over the world, literally from all over the world. And it always chewed away at me whilst I was dealing with these guys who have Money was never an issue, and they've got medical aid. But I always had these names and faces in the background, and I wasn't being any different to the millionaire than I was to the down and out. And that's been the kind of the canvas upon which everything has been painted. And when COVID's, or since leaving Cape Town, I've been nurturing and cross-pollinating and editing and cutting and pasting the program that I bring. I bring a program that I've actually put a trademark on it, as you know. It's the Valley of Addiction. And it's a series of spiritual and psychological conditions that take people all the way down into the valley, to the belly of addiction, and another set of spiritual and psychological conditions that can take them out. And it forms the Valley of Addiction. And everybody I've ever met is in that valley. So everybody I ever counseled is in that valley at some point. And so I never let go of the program that we started with the down and outs, and just kept kind of nurturing it for anybody and everybody. With the fee structure, the thing that really chewed away at me is the only reason these guys are not in my clinic is they don't have medical aid and they've got no financial backing behind them. When we ran it for free, it didn't go anywhere. I was asked to send my supervisory team. I said to them, we don't have any food in the kitchen. And they said, well, ask the guys to go to the shops and donate food. I said, no, you ask them.
Yeah.
You go and ask him. I'm not sending the man out to beg. If he can't work to feed, then he needs help. He doesn't need to be shamed. Sure. And so I was in that kind of Rubik cube, spiritual, mental, relational Rubik cube.
Yeah.
Then I've never stopped working on this program. It's a total of 17 years in developing this program. Somehow, somewhere deep inside, knowing this is going online, man. This is anybody and everybody can benefit from this. For 17 years. So when COVID kicked in and I sat back, immediately started to think out of the box. I knew we're going to have to close down. And I had to leave the room. I was chatting to my wife and two of the counselors and one of our clinical psychologists. And it came to the point where we agreed that we were going to close down. And I had to leave the room. And I was hyperventilating with excitement about closing down. I was like in the corridor. I was like, listen, the corridor, get in.
The moment
now's the time.
Yeah.
See, I'm fired up about it.
Good.
So,
and right. And we'll talk about mental health during COVID, but what a thing. So you're confronted with the closure of this thing that you've been doing for almost 2 decades. You stare down the barrel of this gun of closure. You walk out the room and you're pumped. Get in! This is why I love your story, man.
And then at the same time, Nick, you came along.
Yeah, then we came along and we started talking about the fact that you could do stuff online. And the key was, and I think the key is, and I'll jump in here because from a technology perspective, I know a little bit about it and participated with you trying to figure out how to do this, but it comes down to the oldest adage in the book. You need unbelievably good content to be successful on the internet.
All right. Okay. Let's go.
Yeah. And your program is world-class. It's world-class and it has shown success. And we've spoken about the fact that it doesn't show success to 100% of the time. So it's not there's no magic bullet here. There's no silver bullet, but you need, this program goes a long way to helping people, but what it does is it broadens the net of people that it can help.
Absolutely.
So there's not just 15 people in the house anymore. Yeah. There's now a globe of people. And I think what was underestimated, and not by you, I know for a fact that you spoke about this early, and we'll talk about some of the markers, is the impact of mental health and substance abuse that COVID has had. And please remind me, what is the stats coming out of Alcoholics Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous because of COVID?
With regards to relapse?
Yes.
I'm not sure. I would be guessing at statistics, but I'm just not hearing any good news at all. I'm
Yeah.
only hearing bad news. I've got back to the stage now where my phone pings. I think, oh no. This morning, I've had a phone call this morning from Cape Town, and I've had to say, listen, I'll phone you back at 9:30. Another one.
Yeah. So the truth is that, and this is also where we're going to talk about parenting and the impact of COVID on parenting and parenting styles, and we'll get to that shortly. But before we do, here we are on Zoom. I'm an entrepreneur. I also looked, in the shoe business. Pre-COVID, or just as COVID happened, wow, an assault on my senses, an assault.
Yeah.
And to be honest, in the first 2 weeks, I think we all were given an excuse to binge drink alcohol just because of the nature that they canceled or they banned it. So like everybody else, I rushed out and bought beers and wine. And I found myself in the first 2 to 3 weeks actually probably consuming more alcohol than I had before. Secondly, I had this like predisposition of fear and I was scared because of COVID. And I remember finding myself in a place where I was going like, listen, dude, if you're going to get through this, you're going to have to be healthy. And I actually had to regulate and think around what I was putting into my body. If I wanted to, and I realized that if I wanted to be strong enough to get through this, I'm going to have to be strong enough mentally and physically. And I actually then decided to stop in totality.
Yeah.
But I would imagine that myself, I'm similar to hundreds of thousands of business owners out there or professionals that are staring down this incredible gauntlet of the unknown. I know you've used the word pregnant with alcoholism. Could you tell me a little bit about being pregnant with alcoholism or abuse or substance abuse and the dangers that a situation like this pandemic presents?
Yeah. Okay. The terminology is perfect. But unfortunately, a lot of addictions, including alcoholism and eating disorders, men and women, young adults, young adolescents, those guys who are turning from the woman to the young lady, the young girl to the young lady, the young lad to the young man, that window of, I think that's got to be the most important target group at this time, because they have been suppressed. And what's the danger is now is, my fear is these guys could be suppressing feelings, suppressing opinions, starting to harbor emotional and psychological secrets. Okay?
Yeah.
And that's pregnant. COVID has raped us. COVID has come in uninvited and absolutely penetrated every home.
Yeah.
Okay. Some parents have had the alcohol taken away. Yeah. And Nick, you're in the minority. I think you might be in the minority that you were able to see it, rationalize about you needing to regulate. Okay. Yeah. Tells me you struggle to fall into the category of a substance abuser or the chemically dependent. Okay. And I've got to say, I don't know, I've met your mom in passing 2 or 3 times, but I'm guessing you come from a pretty stable home.
Yes.
There you go.
Yeah, I do.
There's it.
I'm blessed. I really feel blessed. I have a stable home. But what you're saying is so frightening. And this thing about COVID coming into every home. I mean, I've got a young boy, a 3-year-old. You've got kids. So we're all, we're carrying this COVID energy. And then our kids are carrying the COVID energy. And are they...
Plus, they're carrying our stress as well. They're picking up on our stress. We don't see it, but they're picking up on our stress as well.
So what can we as parents do? Colin, I know your platform, ehab, has got a course on this, but just talk us through it, the headlines. I think most people watching this will understand that it's critical that they look at it. But what can they expect from the course?
What can they expect from the parenting course? The parenting.
Yes.
The parenting course is actually, I've entitled it, it's parenting styles that can predispose children to a high risk of favoring substance abuse and chemical dependency. We have parenting styles that can groom them for rejecting our parenting style and finding an identity in the drug culture. And we don't even know it. Some of these parenting styles are shockingly innocent.
Oh, wow.
It's because I think the beautiful thing is this parenting style. I've been working on this parenting styles course for 2 years. It had nothing to do with COVID.
Yeah.
Now COVID has put steroids into this need.
Yeah.
Okay, because now we're up against we've got the virus of potential chemical dependency and the aftershock, the post-traumatic, the psychological trauma of what's going on through COVID. We're at war now. We're back at war now. And if we don't win this war in our homes with our children, today's economy is going to look like bliss compared to by the time we get to 2025.
Yeah, I think you're right.
It's got to happen now. And it starts really, really easy in the home where mom and dad sit down, talk to their children about their children and listen to them and explore what they're saying and get emotionally honest. We've got to get emotionally honest. We've got to give these kids an outlet for their frustrations and fears.
Colin, you say it has to happen now. I think you're so right. And what timing to get this thing live. And I know that you're live. I know that ehab.care is live and it's ready to go. And tell us just a little bit about how these courses work. So my understanding is that you, and having dealt with it a little bit, is that you go online, you participate through a journey, but that you've also got online support through the digital medium, through actual real life interactions. Is that right?
Yeah, we have. It's fantastic. I always have to backtrack a little bit. I think I'm trying to set the context. The one thing that really troubled me, I worked in the clinical environment I worked in 2000, in 1999, I was in a clinic working as a part of my degree. And I've been surrounded by clinical psychologists, psychiatrists, social workers, occupational therapists in the addiction treatment environment.
Yes.
Okay. And I've had this little question.
So these people aren't necessarily addicts.
No. They've never, most of them, well, they're not addicts yet. Let's see how they get on now when there's nobody to get their identity from.
Sure.
So it's always burdened me that the clinical psychologist and it's not so much the psychiatric world. I've developed a real healthy admiration for the psychiatric world because on the whole, the psychiatrists say, listen, I'm not an addiction specialist. They send people to us.
Yeah.
From the clinical psychologist side of things, very, very few clinical psychologists will refer a chemical dependent man or woman to me because I'm not clinically orientated.
Yes.
And that's always been, I always felt as if the chemically dependent person was being used as a project. A perfect example. There was a young lady who was developing feelings for her counsellor in my facility. She was developing feelings for me. She was flirting with me. And I spoke to our clinical psychologist about it. And she said, oh, yeah, it's transference, Colin. I said, I know it's transference, but I want you to talk to her about transference. She can't hear me. She's got goo-goo eyes. Yeah. I said, I want you to go and talk to her about transference. Explain to her what transference is. Or she said, oh, no, we can't do that. As if it was classified information. And then I thought, yeah, okay, then let's keep them needy.
Yeah. Okay.
And I don't like it when a counsellor keeps the counsellee dependent upon the counsellor.
Yeah.
That's not right, man. That's not fair.
Yeah.
That's not fair. So I've got a team of recovery coaches on ehab, a proper crew.
A good old-fashioned crew.
A proper turnout.
And they're global, Colin.
And they're global, man. And we've got men and women around the planet, man, with quality of recovery. They come from hectic backgrounds. They've got years, and I think like the average clean and sober time is 5 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm also taking on some youngsters with from 18 months onwards. I want to get some youngsters onto the platform as well that we can just mentor
Yes.
for tomorrow's ehab.
I think that is such a critical point, because I think you're going to have some young people that are going to need help, and maybe it's better if they speak to someone they can relate to from an age perspective.
Absolutely. You know, the best way to receive help is to help.
Yeah. Colin,
We've
isn't
got
it
this.
amazing? I'm sorry, I'm going to digress. I'm going to get a little philosophical, but this is the time to help. You know, and we're talking about a business, right? But ultimately, like, I don't think you're very interested in the commercial model. I think your vision has always been to get this thing out and to get it exploded open and to make it affordable and to make it accessible. And like you put it, I love how you say you've put a crew together. It's almost like you've got a little army now, and we're going to charge, and we're going to do things that we're going to do it like it's never been done. And our vehicle's called ehab.care. I love it, and I'm almost grateful to COVID because of the energy of wanting to help that it has brought to the world.
I get weepy with it, Nick. Seriously, man, because the counselling, the addiction counselling we apply is exactly the same as people are going to need for post-traumatic COVID counselling. It's exactly the same. Counselling is counselling. There's nothing new under the sun. We just step in. The addiction counselling is to step into the addiction and unpack it so you know exactly how it is constructed. That's what we do in addiction counselling. That's what we do on ehab. Because when you fully understand what the addiction looks like and what the addiction's doing to you, the addiction starts to become less and less attractive.
Mm. Yeah.
And the more we get honest about it, the more we break free from it. And that's just good counsel that's going to apply to this window of chadults, these guys who are going from childhood to adulthood.
Yeah.
That's my burden. I've got a 16-year-old daughter.
Yeah.
And I've seen what COVID did to her and the emotional, psychological confusions. And she was shouting and screaming at me, "You go!" And I thought, this young lady represents a bazillion young ladies around the world who are going to need what we offer. It just confirmed this is the time, man. And whoever's listening and whoever's watching, if there's anybody out there from the academic world, I want to know why this kind of program is not being inserted into the high school curriculums for these youngsters from the age of 15 onwards.
And I'm willing to bet that if somebody came to speak to you about helping on that, you would.
In a heartbeat.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a challenge for anyone listening out there in the education system. Colin Garnett has just volunteered to help insert this critical information into our children's learning. And I think let's see if we can make that happen.
I will pack up my little home with my little family and go and live wherever it is we need to live to fight this war.
Yeah. Well, Colin, I think, we're going to have episode 2. I hope you don't mind.
I'm all right with it, mate.
But as far as episode 1 goes, this is brilliant. But we're definitely going to be back. So let's just call this episode 1. It's the introduction to ehab and to Colin. And I think what a wonderful, uplifting conversation, and what a wonderful, uplifting project. I'm thankful to you for what you're doing, and wish you all the best. And like I've said, any assistance or any help in any way is forthcoming to you and your incredible purpose. So thank you for joining me today. And I'm sure we'll see each other very soon. And this is going to appear on the ehab YouTube channel, as well as all its social pages. And you can click in all the links to follow it and learn more on ehab.care. And keep an eye out for Colin. There's going to be a lot more coming from him, especially digitally. So Colin, thank you very much.
Nick, bless you, mate.
Take care.
Thank you so much, Lovely seeing you. We'll see you soon.
See you soon. Bye.
Ciao, mate.